Oh, hi there. If you like cricket in a way that brings you to, the good areas channel, then I think we have the game for you. Hit Wicket is a mobile game that is way more than just about, smashing your screen. It's about strategy and what you really try and do inside a cricket game. However, there's still a little bit of fun and gaming involved because you can get superpowers when you get things right. And it's not just about playing either. You can build your own team and coach it and manage it and do all those other things that, let's be honest, you really want to do all the time when it comes to cricket. So download the game now. Bring out the cricket pundit in you and download Hit Wicket free for mobile. Because Hit Wicket is a cricket game made for you. Stick it in your pocket today.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 24 of the Overthrows podcast. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at DefMango on Twitter. And with me, in the flesh, is Jared Kimber, who you can literally find everywhere. I'm just going to poke him to check if he's real. Yeah, he's real. All right, so we've got lots to talk about. I won't be giving out shout-outs to the comments people today because the screen is far and my eyesight is kind of weak. But you guys will have to bear with me and we'll take all the super chats towards the end. Let's start with India versus Zimbabwe. There is a 5-match T20I series currently underway, and it's actually tied at 1 game each. Zimbabwe managed to defeat what was a second-string Indian team, of course, because none of their World Cup winners are featuring. But still, it is a pedigreed team. They've played lots of T20 cricket. And what this is basically is, once again, a loud cry to the ICC to somehow facilitate the lesser-ranked teams, at least in this format, so that they get more exposure.
It's incredible that when you think back on it, Zimbabwe didn't actually make the World Cup, right?
Yeah.
Because they played some good cricket. Was it against Bangladesh, I think, coming into this series as well? They're a hard team to play at home because their wickets are, well, actually, after watching this World Cup, they probably would have been quite well suited to this World Cup. So I think they're a difficult team, all things considered, to go up against. I thought the funny thing was that when the first game when India lost, everyone was like, that's it. We should never have asked for the kids to play. We're all idiots, blah, blah. And then the next game, they made, was it 160 in 10 overs or something?
Something like that.
And suddenly everyone was like, no, so we would have won the World Cup easier if Abhishek Sharma had played. So confirmation bias is going out everywhere. But no, look, no doubt Zimbabwe is a team with lots of flaws, but they still have Sikandar Raza, so they still win some games.
Yeah, and it was interesting when I posted a tweet that Zimbabwe have just defeated India's second-string team. There were two kinds of responses that I was getting a lot. One was like, this is not second-string, it's better than that. And then there were the other responses which were like, oh no, this is India's C team. So I don't think that's quite correct. I'm more inclined towards, yes, these guys are still pretty damn good, and they would make first teams for most other countries.
It looked to me like it was a bit of a development squad, right? Like you had a couple of players there where I thought to myself, actually, it wasn't the players. It was more that they put it together in a way where they were like, this isn't properly a cricket team. It's about 11 players we want to learn a little bit more about. And so we're going to put that together. And we've seen that before with teams. So
every time India go to Zimbabwe, this is what they do, don't they?
What's what a lot of teams do with Zimbabwe now, right? Except for Bangladesh, who, to be fair to them, went with a full-strength team and still didn't make it work.
And Pakistan, Shaheen, Naseem, Haris Rauf, everyone plays Zimbabwe. They never rest those guys. So
yeah.
there are still some teams out there that don't send development squads to Zimbabwe.
I forgot of Pakistan, of never resting anyone ever.
Yes, burn them out. Burn out the fast bowlers. But back to Zimbabwe getting more exposure, and other teams as well. We saw how the USA did really well in the World Cup, and their next major team, major game versus a proper team is in the 2026 T20 World Cup. So they don't actually have any series scheduled in between, which makes me wonder, Jared, and this is just me thinking out loud, maybe the best way to go about this is that if T20Is, bilaterals, are going to exist, you might as well have quadrangular series, right? Have 2 top 8 nations and then bring in 2 associate nations or lesser ranked teams like Zimbabwe or Ireland. And that way you can give them more exposure, because we saw how the Netherlands benefited.
What makes you think that people want to give other nations exposure?
I don't know. I mean, people want that. I'm not sure the ICC does.
Look, the ICC isn't in charge of bilateral cricket anyway, are they? So, look, I think realistically, probably if you were coming up to a major tournament now, I don't think it's a bad idea for you to bring over 2 or 3 teams, spend a little bit more money if you're India or England, or Australia and say to yourself, okay, we can bring over, Namibia, Netherlands, Nepal, like different kinds of teams that you might have to go up against. So you could do that with another couple of big teams there as well. It's just not the way that it's done, though. And so, again, we're in a situation where it's not likely.
It's unfortunate because the gulf between associate teams and top-ranked full-member nations is as smaller as we've ever seen it before. Like this is new territory now. And clearly, this is the format that should be used to grow the game beyond just the Commonwealth nations, right? But it doesn't seem like they view it that way, at least people who run the show.
Look, you don't make any money really from bilateral T20 internationals.
That's fair.
And I think that's an issue that a lot of teams have around the world. I reckon about every 2 months, someone sends me a question saying, why don't we have tri-series anymore on the site?
We're about to.
Hey?
We're about to have tri-series.
We are about to have one. And it's because they don't make money. Right? If you can work out how to make money off them, that's a little bit different. But most people can't work out how to make money off them, so they don't exist. And it's the same with this. Your basic premise is fine, right? And look at, you look at that series back in the old days when Australia A and Zimbabwe and England played.
Yeah.
We've had things like this before, but we're not really likely to have them again.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what the future holds. And maybe, in the future, we could have a 32-team T20 World Cup. Who's to say that's not a possibility, right? Last bit on Zimbabwe before we move on to India. Tendai Chatara and Sikandar Raza were the guys who won them that game. They took 3 wickets each. That's a bit of a concern that the old heads are the ones who are still winning games of cricket for Zimbabwe. And the younger lot is not really standing up, to that level, or at least it hasn't yet. There's one guy, Brian Bennett, is he? He looks impressive. But apart from him, I can't really think of some new players that Zimbabwe has introduced, because it's been a while since we've been seeing Ryan Burl, the two paces, Muzarabani and Ingarava. But in order to kind of move up a level, someone's going to have to come up and raise their hand and say that I belong here.
Well, they're best young batting prospect out is probably playing county cricket at the moment, and isn't likely to play for Zimbabwe in the short term anyway. Who knows what happens in the long term with him?
Maybe they can get Tom Curran.
So there's an issue. Look, their bowling's good. Their batting is just not good. It's not even close to world class at the moment. And I think the bigger problem is probably they rely a lot on Ryan Burl and Sikandar Raza, who are both okay batters, but not frontline top order players. So I think they end up in a situation there. But yeah, they've been in this position for ages. Where I remember me and Bharat did a podcast a couple of years ago, going, you look at this bowling attack, and you're like, you put a subpar batting lineup next to it, and they're a good team.
Yeah.
They can't even get a subpar batting lineup. They really struggle to put runs on. You look at some of their openers and their top order players, and you're like, what?
The one guy I had hopes from was Wesley Madhawere, and he hasn't quite developed to that level, which I expected him to. But yeah, you're right. The batting, and that's the case with most teams these days. But we saw the World Cup, right? Bangladesh, Sri Lanka.
It's funny. So someone said this to me the other day. They actually said that there's a lot of associate teams who are really good at bowling and not really good at batting. But I think people had forgotten that, you had USA and Canada who were really good at batting and couldn't bowl.
That's right.
So I think there's a couple. There does seem to be, outside of what you would almost say. Oh, you said Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. You could throw in about 4 or 5 other associate teams.
The Netherlands are pretty decent at bowling.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So there's a few. Nepal is certainly a bowling team, right? Uganda's a bowling team. Do you know what I mean?
You and I could bat for Uganda.
Yeah. And so it does seem that teams have found it easier to find bowling, especially in T20 cricket, than they have batting. That said, I think Zimbabwe's bowling is really, really good. I think it's better than some of those, by a distance, than some of those teams. But, Joy Lord Gumbi is not quite at the level you need for international T20 player, Bayram.
That is unfortunately true. Let's come to India. They did lose the first game, but they won the second one by a colossal 100-run margin. They scored 234 in the first innings. Ruturaj Gaikwad scored 77 or 47. Rinku played really well, 48 of 22. But those guys weren't the stars of that game. The star was Abhishek Sharma. Smashed his maiden T20I ton for India of 46 deliveries. I mean, with all the retirements coming in India's T20 team, I personally feel that he's a shoo-in at this point. You've got to go with him. And Jared, this isn't even like his fastest effort. we know that he could probably someday beat this record and smash 100 and, I don't know, 32 deliveries.
Look, I mean, I think it's a good sign. We saw Travis Head play in those West Indian wickets that didn't help him beat Travis Head, and he was still fine. But we know Travis Head's a test player, right?
Yeah.
We needed to see Abhishek on some of the dodgier wickets play at that level. If I was an Indian fan, I'd be quite excited that he's playing on these, interesting pitches at times.
They are interesting, right? It's not an IPL flat deck.
That's what I mean, yeah.
So that's very promising if you look at it that way. Plus, when I look at the younger lot in India, the batters at least, I feel like you've got to go with some of these guys who go ballistic. And Abhishek Sharma is the epitome of that.
The most ballistic.
Yeah, he's that player, right? And I mean, if I were an Indian fan, I would be really, really excited. Plus, the range on this kid.
Yeah.
He has shots all over the park.
No, look, I'm a huge fan. I obviously would have picked him for the World Cup. How he would have gone on those wickets against the good teams, that would have been fun, but we never get to see that. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the way he plays. And I think you're right. He's an automatic one, isn't he, going forward?
Has to be. I mean, if he isn't, I would be very, very surprised. And it's unfortunate for a lot of these fringe players, right? Like, Gaikwad is such a quality player.
Yeah.
But when you start constructing India's first-string team, even with the retirements, kind of misses out. At least in my books, he does.
Yeah, I wonder where he fits in long term. I think they have other options in that position, but he's still a really talented player as well.
Yes, of course. He's very risk-free, very classy, and can at times turn it up a notch. Coming to India's bowling, their star performer in this series was Ravi Bishnoi. He took 4 for 13 and 2 for 11, which is what? 6 for 24 in 8 overs?
Sounds good.
That's more wickets than he took in the IPL, I feel.
I don't think he's ever taken a 4-wicket haul in the IPL.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And he did that in the game that India lost. But, now that India are looking forward, Yuzi Chahal is their go-to wrist spinner, right? I mean, right-arm wrist spinner. Of course, Kuldeep's around. But I feel like now in this cycle, India will probably give that green signal to Ravi Bishnoi to get more game time in and play some stronger teams. And he has to be that guy because Rahul Chahar has slipped. Even though he was decent in a few of those IPL games, right? And who am I missing here?
Leg spinners?
Yeah. I don't think I am. Markande?
No.
Nah.
No.
Yeah.
Look, the problem with Bishnoi, I think, is going to be that if they have Kuldeep on the side, they both basically spin the ball the same way because he bowls wrong. One bowls wrong and one bowls leg breaks.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the pairing works great. And also, neither of them can bat. And I know people will say, oh, but of recent time, neither of them can bat, right? So I do think from that perspective, they're probably a little bit further behind them where they should be to have both of them. But Kuldeep can get injured. Who knows how many finger spinning all rounders they'll have into the future.
So
there will be some flexibility. Because if you look at the moment, Akshar should stick around for a while, but Akshar does get injured. Then they've got Hardik Pandya and Reddy as their seam bowling all-rounders. So they might have some seam bowling flexibility to be able to bring in an extra wrist spinner who doesn't bat at times. But my issue would be that they then sort of spin the ball in the same direction as each other.
I think, Yuzi Chahal, I've been a fan, as you know. At times I feel like I overrate him.
Fan.
Yeah, at times I feel like I overrate him, and then at times I feel like the world underrates him. I'm still not sure where I fall exactly on Yuzi Chahal, but I feel like he could have played more for India. Again, he's only adding one skill, right?
Yeah.
Because he's not the best fielder, can't hold a bat. Bishnoi is a better fielder.
Yeah.
That's for certain. He's got better hair. That's also a thing.
Okay.
So I feel like it's time that India now start investing in him. I mean, Rahul Chahar also has great hair. They have great hair wrist spinners. Kuldeep is the weak one.
Amit Mishra?
He loses this. Also, he's what, 50?
Yeah.
Another spinner, spin bowling all-rounder who did well for India in these games was Washington Sundar. Fringe player for a long time, someone who they've rated really highly when he was coming up the ranks. He was part of that Australia Test series that they won and, had some crucial performances over there as well. 1 for 28 and 2 for 11 in these two games. Ravi Jadeja is gone. He has retired from T20Is. Now, I know Washington spins the ball the other way. His bowling arm is different. But he seems like an almost like-for-like replacement, especially if him and Akshar both play then they spin the ball different ways.
Yeah, I think the problem, Washington's probably, if you're Charles' biggest fan, I might be Washington's biggest fan. I was there when RCB, they had a choice between him and Gautam, I think it was. And I was like, guys, what are we talking about here? Let's get Washington. He was misused at RCB, and he hasn't really come good for other franchises since. I'm not sure where his best spot in the batting order is. Where with Jadeja, as you said, like for like, at least we know Jadeja's going to bat 7. Right?
Yeah.
Bowling, I think he might work quite well because he can be your new ball spinner. And India probably haven't had a new ball spinner for a while. Not that they haven't had guys like Akshar who can do it, but he's probably more of a specialist. If you can get 2 overs out of him early on and he can bat at number 7 with Akshar in the side, I think that's quite a good mashing of skills. He just needs to get better. I think he's still quite young.
Like yeah, I would like to think
24 so. Maybe.
Has to be somewhere around that age bracket. We can't even look at the comments. Someone would have told us by now.
So I still think that, like a lot of all-rounders, he might actually develop at 27, 28, a little bit later. But they know that. I think there's probably a lot of Indian fans who are just frustrated that he's always around because he doesn't do that much. Look, I've never talked to anyone from India from this, but if you're asking me as a scout/analyst, I'm like, the reason is there isn't another player who can combine those 2 different skills together. So keep him around. He might not play in World Cups, but eventually if he does break free, he'll be used to the environment and he'll be able to play at that level. Play him in some games like the Zimbabwe one, which doesn't mean as much, right?
That's true. Also in the IPL, I feel like he's stuck in the wrong team. He's not going to get much game time at the Sunrisers Hyderabad. He probably needs to go to a team which is in desperate need of a genuine all-rounder even, I'd say. Like, if you look at potential, he could develop into that. Right now, of course, he's not there yet.
Yeah.
But...
No, I mean, what you really need is a situation where a team needs a new ball spinner and then probably a number 7, right? And he doesn't have to bat at number 7, but someone who can do that. But he has to find a zone in the game where he bats plus.
Yeah.
They've tried him as an opener and that hasn't worked. I know they've tried him down the order and that hasn't worked. I wonder if he's not at his absolute best, probably a number 4, number 5 who comes in and smashes spin. This is why I think he's so talented, because I do think he has roles that he can do. The problem is that it's a little bit like, he's a little bit like a crap version of Sam Curran. You kind of have to mold the side around him. RCB and Sunrisers are probably 2 sides he shouldn't have been at.
That's true.
If he would have been at Delhi when they were developing all those kids, and him and Akshar together, that would have been a really fascinating partnership.
Or if he is in Mumbai in the Mohammad Nabi role, right? Because bats around that same area and he doesn't have to bowl 4 over. Or, well, maybe he does, given that Chawla is also like 50, right? So, I mean...
He will give them another spinner that can't bowl 4 overs.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, I feel like his ceiling is high. It's just that he's maybe taken a bit longer to develop. But again, don't know his age on the top of my head. I would like to think that he's still quite young.
He's not old.
One last player that I need to talk about with respect to India, and this is another fringe player who they've tried every now and then in, some good series as well, Avesh Khan. And he has shown signs of brilliance, and he's a hot and cold sort of bowler, I feel. When he goes for runs, he goes for plenty. When he does well, he takes a lot of wickets.
Yeah.
And that's what he did in this series as well. 3 for 15 in one game and then 1 for 29 in the other. He had an interesting IPL season. Some games he would give match-winning performances, and then in the other games, he was somewhat the weak link. But with so many other seamers around or at India's disposal, I'm not sure if he, at least at this point, has that level of quality where he can usurp, the other guys like Shami, Siraj, and Bumrah is different level.
He probably won't get past Bumrah, you're right.
Yeah.
Look, he's an interesting player. They really like him because we've seen him quite a bit now. He was in the World Cup squad or in the backup?
He was the reserve.
Yeah. Whereas, obviously, I thought Natarajan was a better option. But maybe, but also I think they probably thought to themselves, we know what Natarajan can do. We don't need another death bowler. We need someone else. Look, Avesh Khan, there was one year when I reckon he bowled about half a yard quicker when he was younger. You put that together with the skills he has and his composure, he's a really good player. He has to get that half a yard back, right? And I don't know. I remember... Tim Southey and Chris Wokes are really interesting players because they both put on pace later on in their career. That's what he's going to have to do. And if he doesn't do that, he's not accurate enough, he's not skillful enough to be that little bit slower. But when he was younger, I rated him very highly. So
Yeah.
again, him and Washington are probably project players as much as anything, which is another reason why I don't understand why Avesh was ever reserved for the World Cup, but that's a different argument.
Yeah, I remember him at under 19 level, and he was really impressive. Do you remember that seamer? What was his name? The Shubman Gill under 19 team, Kamlesh Nagar Koti.
Yes.
Where the hell did he go?
Did he not get injured a lot?
Did he? Because I was really impressed with him at under 19 level at least. And then he did get a pretty good IPL deal. I think Kolkata signed him or something. But
He certainly played some IPL, didn't he?
yeah, he's clearly fallen off the radar. I haven't seen him in a long time. But yeah, India's development squad looks good. They have 3 more T20Is, so good game time. And yeah, after this, they have Sri Lanka. The performers from this series surely should get picked for that one.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what they do next, I suppose. I think they are, they can just muck around with it a little bit now, can't they? I mean, that's what I would be doing. They don't have a coach or really anyone in charge at the moment.
Yeah. Lakshman is in charge for this series, but
I mean, really in charge, you know what I mean? So if it was me, I'd just be thinking to myself, okay, well, let's just get as much legs under players we want to develop and also probably answer some questions on some players. So Abhishek is a very good one. We knew he was going to play in this anyway.
yes.
But they need to answer some questions with Abhishek on bad wickets and things like that.
And I hope Harshit Rana gets some game time because they've picked him for this series and he did do quite well in the IPL, bowled some good slow ones at the depth, and he can crank it up a bit too. And what, he's 22?
Yeah, he's very young.
Something like that, right? Also great.
Stop asking ages when we're this far from the computer and neither of us can Google it.
Yeah, that does pretty much wrap up our review of the India-Zimbabwe series. You guys are watching Overthrows with Behram and Jared, and we'll be back after this short break.
I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories, like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.
Welcome back to Overthrows. You guys are with Behram and Jared. Next up, we'll move to the women's series. India's women are playing South Africa's women in India, and there was a solitary test match in which India defeated South Africa by 10 wickets. It was a very commanding victory, and it was played in Chennai. India scored 603 for 6 in the first innings and then declared Shefali Verma 205 of 197 and the informed Smriti Mandhana 149 of 161. They baseballed it.
Wow, I mean, obviously they're all close personal friends with Ben Duckett. He played a big role in this. That was incredible to watch. MB play. I looked at some of the clips and I was just like, they're just smashing the ball everywhere here. So no, I thought it was very, very interesting. It was a pretty good batting wicket though, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there were more 50s, right? Jemima, Richa Ghosh, Harmanpreet, they all got 50s, but we have to take into account that South Africa were a bowler short. Marizan wasn't bowling in this test match.
Now, I asked this on the group, but I can't remember if anyone answered. Was she supposed to not be bowling? Or did she see the pitch and decide not to bowl? No.
I was in Hamburg, dude.
I'm assuming she was picked as a batter for this test.
Yeah, but surely you give her an over when things are going so bad.
Well, she must have been injured. That's what I mean.
Has to be.
Now we can't even see Hypercost if he says it. Yeah. But yeah, it was the bits I saw, incredible batting wicket. What did South Africa make in reply?
So South Africa actually didn't do all too badly. They made 200 something the first time and then 373. Yeah. So they they had a good opportunity to draw this game at one point.
Yeah, exactly.
India also dropped some catches.
So it was a tough wicket. It's interesting to think that India batted so hard so early on. So what did they make of day one? Was it 500?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know Cheyenne was going crazy about it.
He was.
I was literally on a train coming to you, I think.
Yeah.
That's what was happening that day. And I was just looking at his updates and he was enjoying it.
So it was extraordinary from that point of view, and it really does show, I think, how much cricket has changed.
Yes.
Women's cricket was incredibly slow. In for a long time, especially in Test match cricket, and things have just changed now. And to get a day like that, look, we know this isn't a full strength. Well, it's not that it's not full strength South Africa. It's what South Africa have left.
Yeah.
Is the best way of putting it at the moment. And if Marathon's not going to bowl, it's just going to get worse, right? So, look, there's some definite issues there with that team. There's no doubt about that. But certainly exciting that we get these ridiculous sorts of numbers. And yeah, thanks to Ben Duckett and everyone else.
Yeah, if you look at South Africa's response with the bat, of course, Marathon did score 74 in the first innings. And then their star batter was Sunalus. She scored, 109 and 65. So 65 in the first, 109 in the second. Laura Wolvaart got a ton as well, and she kind of blocked it out. Nadine de Klerk also scored a very slow 65. So even though they were far behind the 8 ball in this test match, they still made a fist out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, I wonder if India went a little bit harder, thinking to themselves, this is a really good batting wicket. And so we need to give ourselves as much time to get the wickets as possible. And that was kind of right.
Yeah. Plus, they've been playing a lot of Test cricket of late, if you know.
They are now the specialists in Test cricket, aren't they?
Yeah, so I would say that at least when they play at home, they're probably the leading Test side.
Feels like they played more Tests of recent times than New Zealand women have ever played.
Yeah, or Pakistan men. At least in a year. Anyway, India's player of the match was none of their batters, interestingly enough. Sneh Rana was the player of the match.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I said man of the match again. I need to fix that about myself. Did I? I don't know.
I didn't even hear. I thought you said player of the match.
It's an easy mistake to make. But anyway, player of the match was Sneh Rana. She took a 10 for 8 for 77 in the first innings. She is a bit of a late bloomer with her right arm off break and, handy runs with the bat. And she's become quite a core member of late, of this Indian team.
Look, we see a lot of all-rounders coming through the women's cricket. She's obviously another one. As you said, we don't see as many women's players traditionally late bloomers. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. One is that women develop quicker than men when it comes to sport. The other one is that there hasn't always been the finances to come back in later. So that doesn't mean... And so we are now seeing, of course, older women, especially in the places that have leagues coming through. Not that she's old, but like rather than developing at 16, like Holly Colvin and these sorts of things, we're seeing a completely different kind of generation of cricketers coming through.
She's my age, by the way. She's 30.
I mean, she's basically dead.
I mean, women do retire earlier, but I feel like that too will change now. With all the sports science and the fact that there's money now in women's cricket, it's bound to change.
I think we'll get more women playing into their mid-30s. I don't know if we'll get a lot of women playing into their early 40s.
No woman Misbah around.
Well, just from a perspective of if you're a good enough player, right, to play, a few hundred internationals from your international team as a woman, you're probably going to be in the side at 17, 18, 19. Into the 40s, you're then looking at 22, 23, 24 years of professional career. We don't see many athletes do that in general, right? Like eventually your body breaks down, you don't want to do it anymore. So I think, but you're right. I think we'll see a stretching out of women, not literally, although maybe there'll be torture devices. I don't know. But I think we'll see a stretching out of their careers. And also what we should see is less of the sort of 15, 16-year-old girls playing and more of that 17, 18, 19-year-old young women playing, which will then, again, that will extend it at the other end. And, it's the old line of, I can't remember who it was, but I think it might have been Zoe Goss who said, you have to decide whether you want to play for your country or pay your mortgage. They don't have to do that anymore. And so if they love the sport and their body stays good, they'll play for a long time. Like Charlotte Edwards must have played until she was old, and she started when she was young because didn't she break the world record when she was a teenager, I think. So it has happened, but it's also kind of easy to do it if you're someone like Charlotte Edwards who's just obsessed with cricket and is an amateur and then gets paid at the end. It's very different. I don't know. Did you see the podcast I did with Susie Bates?
No, I didn't.
It's really interesting because I was saying to her, like, is it now it's a job? Is it different and everything? And she said, yes, but it hasn't been a job my whole life. And so I can throw myself into all these leagues and take all these different jobs. Whereas some of the other women are thinking to themselves, do I really want to be away for that amount of time? So what we're really seeing is just a whole different generation of women's cricket. And on top of the fact is we're talking about national cricket as well.
Yeah.
Franchise cricket, who knows how long some of these players will go for. Like if you're Marizan, right, let's say she can't bowl anymore in, I don't know, 2 or 3 years' time. And I doubt that's true because I think she'll be bowling well when she's 50. But if she's probably going to try and change herself into a specialist batter, right? And try and get some gigs from that. You know? Again, probably less likely to do that in the amateur era.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, if the franchises start paying the women better, then we might see a different ball game altogether in the female game. Anyway, they also currently are playing a T20I series, South Africa and India, and South Africa actually beat India.
I think India were already playing T20 in the test match, so this is
so,
redundant.
Just some colored clothing, that's the only change. But South Africa won the first T20I. They could have won the second as well. They had posted 177, but the game got washed out. Tasmin Brits was the star of the show for South Africa. 81 and 52 to her name. Marizan scored a 50 as well. But clearly, they are a better limited overs side. But this is good from South Africa because they had kind of slipped off after that T20 World Cup final run. But now this is a big victory in the context of things.
I think it's massive. I saw bits of the test match and I didn't realize it was a T20 because I'm sure we'll be talking about, but New Zealand, England played as well, didn't they? So I watched some of that. So I didn't even know. So when I saw the result, I was like, well, that's A, crazy because I just played the test match 5 minutes ago. And B, that's huge. And again, we've talked about this. We just need more upsets in women's cricket. It's the most important thing for women's cricket at the moment is that random teams keep beating, especially Australia, England, and India, but all the way through. The more upsets we get, the more we will talk about it. But also, it shows that there's an evenness to it, which we've never really seen before.
Would you categorize that as an upset, beating India in a T20 at home, or well, India's home?
Yeah, beating India, don't you think?
Especially after South Africa's retirements.
Yeah, you would have India in the top 3 certainly for the World Cup coming up, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, especially in those conditions.
Yeah, so
I would say maybe top 2. I might even
ahead of England?
I'm not sure where Australia are at right now. I mean, have you seen...
We need chilies, hot for the hot take that just happened here.
Have you seen Meg Lanning's new funky hairdo?
No, I saw her dressed like a rock star or something.
Yeah, and then she went on the slide thing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Very interesting.
Enjoying her retirement.
I'm happy for her. She clearly seems to be having fun. Let's move on to England, New Zealand, of course. The last time we spoke about that series, England had a 2-0 unassailable lead in the ODIs. And now they've won 2 more games. They won the ODI series 3-0 and they've won the first T20. And there hasn't been much competition. And that's been a theme of England versus New Zealand throughout this year. We've covered so many games that they've played against each other. And New Zealand have, 1 victory? And all their losses have mostly been quite one-sided, which tells me that New Zealand cricket is at its lowest after a long, long time.
So I watched about a game and a half of it. And I remember thinking to myself, there were times when Pakistan women looked like they were putting more pressure on them. Yeah.
I think Hypocos said the same thing. I think he tweeted it.
And I think it was the T20 game the other day. And I was going to trade the game. And then I couldn't be bothered, and I was just watching it. I think there was a Veterans game on at the same time, so I was doing a little bit of flicking because I like to watch Usman Asfal.
Oh my God. I do not have that in the
we don't need to cover
schedule, but oh my God, I watched that too.
Also, Dan Christian's drop in the Veterans cricket was one of the worst drops I've ever seen in my life. I'm sorry, Dan, but what was happening there?
Having to hear Waqar Yunus pronounce side bottom is also something.
But I was watching it and the reason I was flicking over is because I was like, New Zealand just have no chance in this game.
Yeah.
It was so obvious so early on. And they went with spin and their spinners just kept getting milked for boundaries. They then kept coming up with these really funky fields that their bowlers couldn't back up. And I can't remember when Maya Bouchier maybe went out the 7th or 8th over in that game I was watching. And I was like, unless they lose like 5 wickets in the next 2 overs, I can't even see a way that England would be under pressure in this game. I was really disappointed with New Zealand from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and they lost to Pakistan not too long ago at home, which was also quite big. And you're right that There were times in the Pakistan-England
Yeah.
series where Pakistan had a genuine chance of causing an upset, but I just did not get that feeling in the series from New Zealand. What I like from an England standpoint is that we saw them collapsing early on versus Pakistan. But in this series, last week we were talking about Tammy Beaumont and Maya Bouchier and how Maya Bouchier scored her maiden ton and she's kind of announced herself. This week, their performances were different. Last week, Charlie Dean and Sophie were the main protagonists with the ball. This week, Lauren Bell took a fiver in the ODI and Sarah Glenn took 3 for 16 in the T20. And I love Sarah Glenn. I am probably her biggest fan as well. It's Yuzi and Sarah Glenn in the googly union. And also with the bat, I think, Nat Silverbrunt, she stepped up.
Yeah.
She scored.
Danny White made runs, didn't she?
Danny White made like 76 and what was the name? Nat Silverbrunt scored 70 odd and then a quick fire 47.
Yeah.
And they have multiple performers now in one series. And that's an improvement from the Pakistan series.
Yeah.
Because the batting did somewhat fail them.
Yeah, they weren't playing great in that series, were they? I thought Pakistan did do well with the new ball and batting against the new ball. The rest of the game was a bit dodgy at times, but that part was there. But they put some pressure back on England.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame for England that that's not happening with New Zealand. That's maybe not quite the situation they want to be in.
Yeah. Also, Amy Jones has been terrific recently. I love the way she strikes the ball as well. And what she gives England, along with, what's the name of that all-rounder? Danielle? Gibson?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They've got some firepower down over
Yeah.
there. And that, I think, will be very, very critical come T20 World Cup because they've got the spinners, right? If they have a long batting order which can strike the ball at a quick rate, I feel like they've got most boxes checked as well. That's why I'm feeling that.
You said they're going to beat Australia. That's what I heard. Australia's not even going to make the final on the Bayram system.
If I look at the squad composition of England and India, they've got the two best slow left arms, and Radha Yadav and Sophie.
Yeah.
So that's a big plus. England have a spin trio, and India will be in conditions that suit them. So yeah, hot take. Maybe we'll make a reel out of this someday. But I feel like those two teams are stronger than Australia.
Cuts. Pace.
Anyway, that kind of wraps up our itinerary. This has never happened. What are we at? 37 minutes?
That's because we're here. There's no cricket, and I've lost my voice.
Yes, and yeah, that's also a part of it. But anyway, let's move towards the super chats. Let's see how many we have today.
Now you want me to? Oh, we do have super chat.
Oh, we have one super chat. Wow, never happens.
There we go. Oh, we can read it too.
Deepak Raj asks if Muzarwani was a left-arm bowler with the same skills as now, is he S tier? Definitely an IPL starter at least. Well, he is a PSL winner. So he's reached that level.
Yeah.
The next level, of course, is IPL. But I feel like, bad PR maybe?
Yeah, he's a weird one. He, obviously, when he first came on, everyone was talking him up for a little while. And I don't think he's bowling any worse or any better now than he was when he was young. I think it's a little bit like Jason Holder, where everyone got very excited about the height.
Yeah.
And they're starting to realize that there may not be a matching of the pace with the height. You don't need to be that fast, but Jason Holder's an incredibly skillful bowler, and even he struggles in T20 sometimes. Kyle Jamieson as well, right?
Yes.
Having that little bit of extra pace matters. If Muzarwani was left arm, then you probably are in a situation where it wouldn't matter if he didn't have that. I don't want to make the comment I'm about to make because we are too far from the computer, but he's still young. He's not old, right? Like he's probably 1 or 2 years off his bowling peak. He might add some extra skills, I suppose, is what I'm saying. I don't think he'll get much quicker. I'd be surprised if he never played games in the IPL. Whether he's an S tier level bowler who goes on to be a star or anything, I don't know. But yeah, Deepak, the problem with your question is you can pick any bowler in the world who's right arm.
Yeah.
And say if they were left arm, no one would hit them. It's kind of true. But, I don't think he could swap now.
You know who a good example of this is? Luke Wood. He got an IPL gig, and I bet you that he wouldn't have gotten it if he was a right arm seamer.
Yeah, no, that's very fair.
Yeah.
And the young kid from South Africa who played a game.
Mapaka.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's too young.
No, but you're not picking a right arm bowler like that unless it's like Mayank Yadav or, you would need to be 95 miles an hour.
Basically.
Or Marco Janssen.
Yes.
like 19 foot tall, to be playing as a teenager in the IPL, right?
That's
Whereas if you're left arm,
yeah, definitely.
chance.
Jared Skid is a left-arm seamer as well. That's what I was telling him, that he could be a prized asset in the future.
He's not 6'8".
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
There's still time.
Is that it? No more super chats?
I think there was just one, wasn't there?
Well, that wraps it. Thank you guys for, well, your one super chat. And just a quick reminder to everybody that you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage. That can be your one-stop shop for all the work that we do as part of this team, whether it be written content, podcasts, or videos. And we'll be back with another episode of Overthrows live next week as well. That is all for now. Goodbye.
I know.
And for all of our YouTube live watchers, you guys can stay tuned, because after this short ad break, we will be back with episode 92 of the Uncovered podcast.
Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 92 of the Uncovered podcast. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at Def Mango on Twitter. And with me, in person, is Jared Kimber, who you can find absolutely everywhere, also on this chair right in front of me. I did poke him at the start of Overthrows to check if he's real, and I'm not crashing with a Jared Kimber-shaped bot in London.
Yeah.
So good thing that that's not the case. We have a fair few things to talk about. Actually, this Uncovered might go longer than Overthrows, which also never happens. Let's start with Pat Cummins, who basically has called for a dedicated test window, which runs separately from the franchise window. So international teams can play test cricket in that particular window, and all of the franchise cricket can happen in a separate one. I understand the sentiment. I even agree with the sentiment. Is it feasible?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because for that you'll need multiple leagues to run concurrently, and there's simply not enough players for that.
Yeah, I think there's just multiple problems with it, right? There's when you want to play your... We already know that the biggest issue really is SA20, Big Bash, Georgie Pie Super Smash. I know it's not called that anymore, but it should be. BPL, the Emirates League, they're all clashing with each other. And then PSL's kind of on the back end of all that, right?
The PSL is going to clash with the IPL next year, that we know.
Yeah, so even the PSL is going to have to move, right? So you've already got all those in one big schedule. Well, that means that's the Southern Hemisphere summer. So how do Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa play tests? Now, Australia can play tests in their winter up north. New Zealand can't. They can only play in their summer. South Africa probably could play in their summer in parts. I'm not, I haven't been to South Africa in winter, but I would assume there are places you might be able to do it. But that makes it quite tough if all those teams want to play at the same time anyway. They're also, we know that quite a few of those leagues are legitimately over Christmas. SA20 is going to stay over Christmas.
Yep.
It can be hard to get the Big Bash from over Christmas. I don't know if New Zealand's going to give their series up now as well. So that means you'd be playing Test cricket, but you wouldn't be playing it in the time when it's traditionally been the most watched. There are a multitude of problems here. What really needs to happen, if you really want to protect Test cricket, is Test cricket needs to stop being run by the traditional boards.
Yep.
And starts getting run independently. And if you love ODI cricket, I would make the same argument for ODI cricket. I just don't think we can have the same boards running all the different formats.
Yeah.
And that's what the issue here is. The truth is, I don't know how many. We've got about 4,000 professional male cricketers in the world. And it's about 500 women, I think, at the moment. I'm just guessing. I haven't seen a FICA estimate on that one in a while. With those 4,000 professional cricketers, we have enough to actually have T20 leagues, ODI leagues, and Test leagues all being run at the same time. And then you like your Test cricket, I like my T20, someone else likes their ODI. We can all go off and enjoy ourselves in the way that rugby league and rugby union has gone about, or the way that motor car racing is. Right?
And then we record 3-hour-long podcasts.
I don't know what you and I do in that situation.
Yeah, our niche definitely will not help in that regard. So you already know this. Maybe some people don't, or at least if you follow me on Twitter, you would know that I went to Lord's today.
You went to Lord's today?
Yeah, it was my first day at Lord's as a media professional. I have been there as a spectator and
as a player.
Yeah, I've also taken the guided tour. So it was quite surreal because when I took the tour in October 2022, I sat in the JP Morgan Center and I was kind of like thinking, okay, gonna sit here one day. And today was that day. But that's not.
Have I ever told you my story about the media center? Was it you I was telling the other day?
No, I don't think so.
So I've got a phrase, I won't say it on the podcast, that I say that is really offensive when something has gone wrong. And I yell it at my computer when I'm writing quite a lot. And one day I was at a county game and I did it at the top of my voice. Think of a really offensive thing to say to your computer. And I said it. And I turned around, there was a full group of tourists behind me. And I just not paid any attention. Anyway.
Yeah, so
how was your trip?
Jimmy was, in England's
Talking about grumpy people who would yell at their computers.
Yeah, so he was England's representative because tomorrow there'll be Stokesy and Baz, I believe. So today it was Jimmy. And it was interesting. Judging by his mood, I felt like there was less of a grump factor. And he was actually really emotional, but he was kind of trying to keep it in. That's the sense.
That's not like him to keep his emotions in.
I think he even said at one point that, I'm just going to try and focus on not crying. But it was interesting because his tonality was the same, but he was just taking a lot more time. And it seemed like he was really thinking about what he wants to say. And we all know that deep down inside, Jimmy Anderson wanted to play forever. Right. He even said on the tail end of this podcast that out of 10 days, one day he'll wake up wanting to still play Test cricket. So that's the kind of sentiment that I got. People asked him that, would you have liked to continue? And he's like, well, when the three big dogs come and invite you at a hotel or something, you basically know this is it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, another interesting bit that someone asked him, I can't remember who, they said that, would you want to continue playing first-class cricket? Because he just took a 7 for Lancashire, right? And he also quoted that he's bowling as well as he's ever bowled. And that's probably how you feel after a 7 for. But what do you think?
I wouldn't know.
Do you think he's going to continue to play first-class cricket?
No, I think he probably will retire. He's got the podcast. You told me that he was already talking about coaching. He's obviously... I mean, to be fair, he's kind of been coaching the England team for about 7 years.
Yeah.
As an on-field bowling consultant. I don't know if he got paid for that, but he kind of has been doing that job. I know he loves playing cricket, but I think there's a discipline to his lifestyle that he's going to enjoy in retirement. And by that, I mean as a non-player.
Yeah.
That I think once he talks to some of his friends, he'll understand, I don't need to do this anymore. I can do that. I remember Alistair Cook retiring from England. I can't remember. I think he was still playing for Essex. And we were at the gym in a hotel and he was doing push-ups and, the diamond push-ups and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, you don't need to do that anymore. You're Alistair Cook. You've retired. You don't need to go and play for Essex. Or if you do, you can do it without being the ridiculous physical specimen you are. And I think if Jimmy gets to that point, it'd be interesting to see if he just goes, I have to do a lot of effort to get my body to where I want it to be, to bowl the way I want it to be. Am I going to still be inspired enough to do that in first-class cricket? I think it's almost harder on players of his age, right? Because, there's a lot more things he has to do.
Absolutely. And I don't think he's a fan of the Lancashire weather because he was upset that he couldn't win the game. And that's something he stressed on when people asked him about what he wants from this final test. I asked him, I was like, you're at 700 on the dot and the late great Shane Warne is on 708. Are you thinking about those 9 wickets? Do you want that record? And he said, I just want to contribute with 1 or 2 wickets and make sure that I win the game.
Yeah.
So that's where his mind's at, basically. And I hope that he gets a good farewell. Of course, we've all enjoyed Jimmy Anderson over the years, and I'm sure we'll do a footmarks on him at some point as well. On the coaching and mentoring bit, right? That was my follow-up question to him because we have heard in the news that, he is going to be mentoring England's pace attack at least throughout this English summer. And there is a break between the test matches because you have West Indies right now, or England have West Indies right
and
now.
then Sri Lanka at the end.
Then Sri Lanka at the end. So there's no test cricket in between. So I'm not sure if he's still going to be mentoring during the Sri Lanka series. But I asked him if coaching is something he's thought about, and he has. He is leaning towards, developing into a coach. And I feel like, at least when it comes to bowling in England, there's not much better people that you could hire.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was someone who, for the first 10 years of his career, was a fast bowler with an outswinger, and now he's one of the most skillful bowlers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's whether he can convert that knowledge to other people, and I'm going to assume he can, because he learnt the wobble ball, and then Stuart Broad learnt the wobble ball, and now all the England bowlers have learnt the wobble ball. So I would assume he would be a perfectly fine coach. Coaching sucks, right? I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, if you're an educationalist, like, so I look at someone like Andy Moles. Remember Andy Moles?
I don't.
Andy Moles coached New Zealand and Afghanistan. Mickey Arthur would be another one. I put in there. Roddy Eswick from the West Indies. Those are educators.
Right.
And for them, coaching is like breathing, right?
You can throw in Rob Walters in there as well.
Yeah, so there's a few of those sorts of people. And, Roddy Eswick was an actual teacher. Some of them have been teachers at times, right? I remember talking to Gareth Bathy, and he's like, I do longer hours now than I did when I was a player. The players are all moaning. They're all younger than me. It's fine for Gareth Bathy because he's winning a bunch with Surrey, so he doesn't care. But it is different. Do you know what I mean? He's no longer one of the boys.
Yes.
It's a really, really tricky position. And, a lot of my friends are coaches.
He said his favorite thing to do was to win games for England and then have a beer with his teammates. Yeah. He could still get to do that in a coaching role.
And that's the other thing that you're looking for. But it's a different kind of high when you're a coach than when you're a player as well. And look, he might love it. It might be exactly his thing. But let's see.
Yeah. Also, Jason Holder and Jayden Seales came as the West Indian representatives in the next presser. It was a bit unfortunate to see all the questions being directed at Jason, or most of the questions, with respect to Jimmy Anderson. And he did not have an awful lot to say. Of course, he said that he's a great player, and Jason loves to, compete with great players. But I feel like Jimmy's final test is a bit of a distraction from what is quite a healthy rivalry in recent times, if you think about it. The West Indies have had the wood over England many times.
Yeah, well, they do well in the West Indies, and they come here and don't do as well, I suppose.
They win the odd test.
Yeah. No, they've won a couple, yeah.
Yeah, you think of the twin hundreds that Shea Hope scored, and I think they won after that as well. I can't remember, though. Did they win a test match in the COVID series?
They played good in the COVID series at time. I can't remember if they won a test there. But, look, there's no West Indies media.
Yeah.
Right?
I was the only guy. Oh, actually, there was one other guy in maroon.
That tells you when you're counting how many people have maroon on. So I do think there is an issue there with they are, and I know this for a fact. I remember, this was a long time ago. It might have been 2013. The West Indies media manager had taken me aside and said, "Can you ask some questions about West Indies cricket?" And I can't remember who they were playing, but I was like, "I'm actually covering the other side." He goes, "Jared, if you don't ask these questions, they're just going to get asked about the opposition again."
Yeah.
And he's like, they just get really pissed off.
What I would have done, I didn't get a question, but I really wanted to ask Jason Holder what he feels with respect to leading the attack, right? Because Kemar Roach is injured, and he is the senior most seamer. So maybe he's not going to be bowling with a new ball, or is he?
He might, I don't know.
Yeah, he actually might. Who's to say? But that would have been my question. Also, he got asked once again about, the future of Test cricket and that sort of stuff. And he again said that, look, he has ideas, but it's not his job to provide them with a solution, which is fair. And coming back to that original topic, of course, that we were discussing with respect to the separate windows and all of that, maybe the best way to fix this is that independent body in a hypothetical utopian world, which runs Test cricket and everything is fair, you keep the fees for players per test match so high and equal that it tempts them, right? That is the only way to fix this.
I don't. Yeah. The problem is cricket boards aren't going to be able to afford what the Ambani family is going to be able to afford.
Yeah.
So there's no way of doing that sort of stuff.
And teams don't play the equal or an equal number of test matches.
Unless
the Saudis come in?
You have independent ownership of the Test League.
Yeah.
Hey, Saudis. Hey, Elon. Whoever's watching.
Yeah, Elon, if I'm not wrong, X was a sponsor for one of the Legends teams, was it?
I don't know, but I know Elon is a cricket fan. I only found that out in the last couple of years because I used to use him as a joke when before people hated him, before people knew him well enough to hate him. And then just recently, someone sent me a clip going, he actually really likes cricket. He was talking about a cover drive or something. Got the details slightly wrong, but he was more or less in, I don't want to be a gatekeeper.
Electric cover drives.
Well, I tell you what, I've seen some test matches where you wouldn't get someone out on Mars.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Next talking point is the Champions Trophy 25. I didn't want to include this. Varun, this is because of you, right? Because I am not...
I don't want to talk about the Champions Trophy when it's happening. Why are we talking about 2025?
Because... yes, sure, there's been a proposal and the ICC might have even accepted the proposal with the entire dates and groups and everything. But, I'm not going to think much about it up until the point where BCCI ruined the party and they tell everyone that the government has not allowed India to travel to Pakistan because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. We all know it'll happen. Do it early.
So what they announced the groups and Australia are playing England and India are playing Pakistan.
Yeah, so it's India,
Do you
Pakistan.
know how I know that? Because that's...
all the time?
always going to happen.
Yeah, basically. I think it's Pakistan, New Zealand, India, Bangladesh, and then in England, Australia, South Africa, Afghanistan. So that one's a tricky group, actually, because there are 3 really good teams, and then Afghanistan is a spoiler team.
Yeah.
The other group, I feel like, is not as competitive, and then you have the India-Pakistan game, as always. India is supposed to stay in Lahore for their entire stay, but again, I'm not buying it until they actually arrive. There are some other things, though, that Varun wanted us to talk about. One
Why?
is that
Is this the Varun podcast suddenly?
he was adamant on me including the Champions Trophy, but the other stuff is decent. It's worthy of us having a conversation.
I'll make the call on that. Continue.
Yeah. Davey Warner has said that he is available for the Champions Trophy.
Yeah, I've been interested that a couple of players... I've talked to some agents and stuff just randomly about other things, and even they've been saying things like, oh, no, players kind of want to play, and I was like, do they? I wonder if Australia had won that World Cup, if David Warner would want to play in it. But I've heard some other players as well that I did a podcast where I think I said, a whole bunch of players will retire. And then an agent got in touch with me and said, I don't think as many are going to retire as would have in the past. So, yes, it's possible. I don't think Australia's going to pick David Warner, though. I think they have other options now and they don't really need to pick him.
And this is the right time to invest in the future, right? No one really cares about the Champions Trophy.
No one other than Varun apparently cares about their Champions Trophy.
And Pakistan, because they're the defending champions. And they're hopefully hosting
and the host.
Host. Anyway, let's see if Warner makes the cut or not. But I think he hinted towards this even when he originally retired, remember?
Yeah, I was at the press conference where he kind of fully explained it. No one asked about the Champions Trophy just because we assumed that the ODI World Cup would be his last.
Yeah.
But I suppose now looking at it, it's...
not a long way from now.
8 months?
Less than that.
Yeah.
It's February, so we're into July. It's half a year.
And I think that's one thing I hadn't really factored in is that it's so close to the T20 World Cup.
True.
And again, that goes back to the thing we were talking about with Jimmy Anderson, right? Like, okay, I only have to keep my body right for another 6 to 7 months, and then I can hit the Champions Trophy. Whereas if it was in October, you'd be thinking to yourself, that's over a year. Maybe I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And if you're playing the Champions Trophy and you're playing in the IPL, you're going to be fit anyway, aren't you?
That's true.
So I think that I can understand why he would say that. I'd be surprised if Australia is interested in him playing.
Plus, if you go on to win the Champions Trophy, it's just 5 games. 3 in the group stages, 1 semi-final, 1 final.
It's almost like it's not a real tournament.
It's a mini World Cup, basically, is what it is.
It's a something.
Yeah. Also...
it's the shit Euro.
No, the Asia Cup is the shit Euros. Or the J-Asia Cup. Speaking of which...
The Asia Cup. I don't even know what the Asia Cup would be. The Asia Cup's like the Commonwealth Games, isn't it? Where you're just like, is that a thing? Do they actually do that?
Also, Jay Shah has confirmed that Rohit will be captaining India's side in the Champions Trophy.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because he did mention earlier that he wants, the senior team to continue in ODIs and then also till the end of the World Test Championship cycle.
Yeah, so I don't really get the idea of if Rohit isn't going to captain in the next World Cup, 50 overs.
Yes.
And they're going to have to move leadership on already anyway. And unless Jay Shah just thinks, well, we haven't won a lot of trophies.
Yeah.
We're a 1 in 8 chance at worst in this one. Probably closer to, 25% chance or 33% chance of winning it.
I mean, there'll be some belters. and India have a solid batting lineup.
So maybe it's just as simple as that. But again, I thought Rohit would retire, and he hasn't. I need to hear Rohit say he's going to captain the Champions Trophy because there have been times when announcements have been made and the player isn't always asked. And I don't know how Rohit is feeling about things. And I would assume he'll need some time to think himself.
Yeah, I mean, if in a universe where India do travel to Pakistan.
Which is not going to happen.
Yeah, which is not going to happen. But Rohit and Kohli would be huge crowd pullers. Yeah. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, but no one,
from there.
But no one cares.
Yeah, I mean...
No, what I mean is, like, that just gets money for the ICC. The BCCI doesn't make any of that.
That's also true. Let's see what he has in mind. But he has officially made the statement, which is why Varun was adamant on us covering this. Well, we have uncovered it.
Hey.
And you guys are watching Uncovered with Jared and Behram. We'll be back after this short break.
This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now.
Welcome back to Uncovered. You guys are with Jared and Behram, and we have some more talking points, of course, off-field cricket news. And an interesting one is that, as we all know, Chris Silverwood, he stepped down as Sri Lanka's head coach. We've been told that there were personal reasons behind that, so he hasn't been sacked. And also, consultant coach Mahela Jayawardene has also stepped down. They've got Sanath Jayasuriya in as their head coach, at least for the time being. Sanath was very happy to take the job. He said that the...
Wait, what was he last in the news for, Behram?
Yeah. Okay. Well, he was a former chief selector, if you remember. And yeah, I mean, there have been some things which aren't particularly nice. And I don't know, man. I mean, I just don't see Sanath as a coach. I don't know if he's a long-term fix or a stopgap solution, but I feel like they've taken like 3 steps back.
Banned for 2 years for under an ICC anti-corruption investigation.
And this just happened, didn't it?
2019,
so it didn't just happen.
2021, he finished his ban. I mean, unless it changed. I'm just looking at an old article here.
I remember his time as chief selector also was rocky.
I mean, everything about Sanath, including his cricket, if we're being honest, was rocky. I said, was he the first head coach to ever be convicted of match fixing? You said Herschel Gibbs, but has he been the international head coach?
Yes, Afghanistan, no? Has he not?
He might have. I thought he was assistant.
He might have been an assistant coach, actually. You might be right over
A couple of assistants have, to be fair. It's a bold move by a terrible cricket board. I wouldn't do it. I don't really understand it. It's just political again, and it looks nonsensical to me. And good luck to all the people who have to deal with him, and hopefully he'll be fine, and they'll find a real coach soon again. It's on the Silverwood thing. I don't know what was going on with Silverwood, but I think Estelle probably is clearly is more of an expert on this than I am. But from my perspective, I just kind of thought once that World Cup happened, he was going to get the arse. And now he's got the arse. I'm more worried about Jayawardene not being involved.
That's true. Because he has tons of experience, even in the IPL.
And they didn't say personal reasons with him.
No. He's just stepped down.
It just feels icky to me again. But good luck. And, I don't think I've ever met Sanath Jayasuriya. This isn't against him personally. It's just an interesting move to make your head coach someone who was suspended for 2 years for fixing related crimes.
Especially when you had Mickey Arthur and Chris Silverwood, and there was some fantastic development work carried out in Sri Lankan cricket. And we have a really exciting bunch of bowlers at the very least. Even the batters, Nisanka seems like a good one, He's coming of age slowly. Kusal Mendes has unlocked a new mode of late. And yeah, I mean, I'm just afraid for Sri Lankan cricket because finally, after a long time, I felt like they could again perhaps, rise to maybe not the golden generation level, but a more competitive level. And all of a sudden now with this move, I'm not too sure about that. But I wish them the best. I don't even know what's up with the SLC these days. Like they were disbanded for a bit. Are they back now? Estelle, you come and tell us.
I mean, that's the other thing is who made this decision? Where, because of the way that they have been run, we kind of need to know the full details.
Yeah.
And we won't.
Absolutely not.
And so here we are.
From one shit board to another. But there's good news over here. So the PCB had their Board of Governors meeting, and the best outcome of that meeting, of course, they're upgrading some stadiums and that sort of stuff as well, which is good. The women's cricket budget has been increased from 70 million to 240 million. And we have been told that all of the centrally contracted female cricketers will have an increase in their salary as well. This has been a long time coming in Pakistan cricket. There needs to be more of a professional setup with some structure, some infrastructure, perhaps a women's PSL somewhere down the line, because they're not going to play the IPL, the women's IPL, right?
Yeah.
So that's imperative. But, for all of this administration's ills, and there are plenty, don't get me wrong, at least the words that they say with respect to women's cricket have been promising. Whether or not they'll act upon that, or where these 240 million will go, that remains to be seen.
Yeah. They said that they wanted to make it more important, didn't they? Was it more important?
Yes, they were like, we will look at them the same way we look at men's cricketers. And then they also said that we're going to prep them for test cricket.
Yeah.
Which is all good stuff. Lovely to hear.
So this is the first step. Now we have to see the money, as you said. We hope it gets spent correctly. There's, especially in Pakistan, I mean, you're more the expert on this than I am, but there's a lot of money that probably needs to be spent in certain areas that isn't usually spent on men's cricket.
Yeah.
That they need to think about. And they need to look into those sorts of things. And they need to professionalize 45 women, realistically. You can't compete with the bigger nations anymore if you have an international squad of 15 people and then everyone else is amateur. You're relying on people being really, really talented and coming in and performing on their own, which I do understand is a Pakistani cricket thing in general. But it's very hard in women's cricket now because there really is such a divide between the professionals and the amateurs now.
And this is the time to kind of invest because Pakistan have a talented young crop coming in. And there have been some recent retirees. Bisma is there, Javeria is there. You've got Sana Mir, who is a legend. Use them. I do not understand how Tawfiq Umar is a better option than these women. And also, sometimes I feel like women's cricketers need women coaches.
Look, I mean, I think that'll happen in the game anyway. I think men's cricket should have more women's coaches.
Yeah.
You watch American sports and you think, there's a lot of women working in these roles. And,
absolutely.
In men's cricket, we don't see it as much. So I do think I think you're right from that point of view. I'm not sure that women need women's coaches. What they need is coaches who understand women's cricket.
Yes.
And, I've got some really good friends who've worked in women's cricket, and they'll be honest, they got the job, and then it took them 3 to 6 months to work out what was happening, and, a little bit longer. We know that there can be crossover. We've seen that with Matthew Mott and everyone else. There's no reason why you can't. It's a bit like if you're coaching a county team, then you're coaching an international team. They're very different in some ways in the way that you have to go about your coaching. The best coaches should be able to handle both. But there should be more women's coaches. But I specifically think that you want someone in management who understands the issues with women's cricket, especially in a place like Pakistan. But in general, it's just not the same. And there are well, I'm trying to think of the best way of putting it. There are like structural issues with women's cricket all around the world.
Yes.
Because we don't always have women going, actually, we need this. When men plan women's tours, they plan them at the same length as men's tours. Women generally don't want to tour as long because they have more family responsibilities back at home. Little things like that of like, oh, you're professional now. You can come to Islamabad for 2 months for a commando course. And it's like, no, we can't because we have this, it's stuff like that.
Commando course.
I'm just assuming.
It's not something that couldn't happen.
So
very much on the cards.
So they can hit the ball further.
Yeah. They also, the new team manager for the women's team is a policewoman. So I don't know what's going on over there, but I hope that at least 10 or 20 of those million out of 240 are spent towards getting those women who are centrally contracted the right amount of help. And also I feel like there needs to be a marketing budget to kind of break the stigma, end that taboo and get more women to just play the game.
Yeah.
And you can go to schools and universities. I feel like that's where you'll find more progressive families whose daughters are studying over there, and maybe that's the way forward. I really hope that they do something about that, because there are a lot of women in Pakistan who absolutely adore the sport and play the sport as well. And there are tons of people. It's the sixth largest population, so no reason for them to. Yeah, I think so.
We're too far from the computer.
Yeah, it's either the fifth or the sixth largest population in the world, and it's this big.
I assumed you meant the world and not this room.
I would like to see what the highest population density is. I mean, which country has it? It could be Indonesia, because they have a lot of people.
It's a very different podcast.
That is very, very different podcast. Anyway, speaking about women's cricket and how there are not enough women who come and say that this is what we want. There are 17 women who did ask the ICC something. 17 Afghan women who were contracted by the ACB prior to the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. We've done an entire podcast on this. There's a footmarks called The Other Afghan Team. You guys can go check that out. But they have now, 17 of them who are living in Australia, have asked the ICC, they've sent out a plea that the ICC needs to, or they've requested them that if they could help them set up a refugee team so that they could represent their nation. And I feel like it's high time we do something about this before we lose these 17 women to age or other things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the biggest issue, is if they don't play now, we don't even know if the next generation will come through.
Exactly.
Look, I've said this before, there is money that is given to the Afghanistan men's team that they don't have to split with the women's team, and other teams do.
Like Ireland. Same budget, 2 teams for Ireland, 1 team for Afghanistan.
Half of that money, if Afghanistan can't put a women's team out, half of that money should not go to them.
Yes.
And it should be gone. It should go to the women. When we did our podcast, or I can't remember if it was our podcast or the main video, but someone from the Australian government contacted me about, potentially getting them aid and support and facilities and all that sort of stuff as well. I did another show on TalkSport about it recently. Lots of other people in the media have been doing similar stuff. I would like to think that we are playing our part, but realistically, the ICC just have to admit that they made a mistake. Absolutely. They allowed one team not to have a women's team, and we've all decided that we're not going to shut up about it now.
Yeah.
So fix it.
I think we've brought it up like 4 times now ever since I joined. And, Cricket Australia once again has reiterated their stance on not wanting to play bilateral cricket with Afghanistan. So them not doing something about this is hurting their cricket overall.
Yeah. I mean, eventually, if England and New Zealand decide a similar thing, and then you pop in South Africa and India.
Yeah. India won't, neither would Pakistan, I feel.
I don't know about India. You don't know what the prevailing political conversation. Yeah. This is the thing. England hasn't done it yet. If England do it, what about the West Indies men and women's team are really, really close to each other?
Yes.
Probably one of the closest relationships between male and female. Maybe not as much now, but certainly in that previous era they were. You could get some other teams going, wait a minute, we're kind of on side here. Not to mention that if there's a group of 17 women, they're going to get media attention and they're going to get interviewed. And
they should get media attention.
Yeah, no, of course.
I mean, they had to flee their country and they want to play cricket. They've got to get these women somehow to play cricket. And if not, at least, for a refugee team, get them to play some sort of league. Yeah. Get them to play cricket, right?
Yeah.
So that they can apply their trade and get better. And if you miss out on this particular Afghan women's team, then you miss out an opportunity to inspire other Afghan women. And there's a massive diaspora. Yeah. No, I literally just went to Hamburg and every second dude was Afghan.
Yeah. So no, I think it's certainly something for the future.
Yeah.
Or the present.
Yeah, it is the present. The future is now.
The future is yesterday.
Anyway, let's take our super chats because that's kind of it for our itinerary for Uncovered. We've got Nilesh Sinha who says, what happened to Jared's Hindi channel?
So we have a Hindi channel and we have an Urdu channel. Do we have another one? I think we just have those 2 to begin with. We tried AI and the AI for Hindi, I don't think we ever did it for Urdu, but the AI for Hindi was too pure. And Hindi speakers had real trouble picking up what I was saying unless they had
was really pure. Because I can understand Hindi, but your videos, I was like, what is he saying?
Unless you're a Hindi teacher, apparently, you struggle with it. We tried to get some people to do some voiceover. We haven't found that effectively yet. We know Mr. Beast does that, for instance. If we keep getting sponsorship and, we're recently, Nord have been really good backers of us. Hit Wicket have just come on, and hopefully we'll be able to do future deals with them and some other companies. We might be able to go back and do that. I want to be available in all languages, not me personally, but I want good areas to be available in all languages. And it's something that you and I have talked about with the Urdu channel as well. And
So off topic, but I feel like there's a certain kind of Urdu / Hindi that people speak in the subcontinent because, of course, it was colonized, right?
Yeah.
Which has a lot of English in it.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot that you need to hit.
Well,
both those countries would understand it.
No, I get that, but I actually think so. What I would like to do going forward is have more country-specific channels. So if I'm going to do Urdu, I want the Urdu to be for the Pakistani audience. I want the Hindi to be for the Indian. I'm not saying they won't watch each other's videos because, of course, but the same is we will have a Bangla channel, right?
Yeah.
And that we might have 2 Bangla channels. We might have an Indian one. We might have a Bangla. That the plan is to have a lot more of this sort of stuff going ahead. Obviously, we're involved with Cricket 8 at the moment, so there's a few other things going on. I have enough money to keep running my business, and as long as people are willing to stay in my house for free occasionally. But we're not in a situation at the moment where we can do everything that I want to be able to do. There's a few people I would like to hire, and a few people in our staff I'd like to pay more, not pay around, but other people. So yeah, look, I would love to do multiple languages. I think I've always been frustrated that I can only really talk to English-speaking languages. So in the future, I've been planning this for a very, very long time, but it is down to money and everything else.
Talk to your millionaire friend, Nilesh.
Yeah, exactly.
Path Right Winger, as always, has sent a super chat. He says, I think in India we have experienced young batters and broken young bowlers because we play too much cricket. My friend says it's because Indians tend to be vegetarians. We've had this question before. Who is more right?
Look, I think it's very hard to bowl seam in India. And I think it's slightly easier in Pakistan. And so you do probably have a situation where it's in Pakistan. If you look at the way the 2 different countries developed, we now know that it's not about meat because we have 95-mile-an-hour Indian bowlers. So the whole meat thing is going away. Plus, we know a lot more about protein and everything else. There is an element, though, that a lot of the younger Indian bowlers don't have the right diet. But I can promise you that's also the case for the young Pakistani bowlers and the young Sri Lankan bowlers. I've probably told this story before, but Chaminda Vaas, when he first got the bowling coach job at Sri Lanka, just came in and said, you guys need to eat protein. That was like day one, Chaminda Vaas. It wasn't get your wrist right or anything. It was like, you guys need to fix your diets. There's certainly an element of that with young Indian bowlers, but I think that's right across. I mean, I would say I've seen some West Indians with some horrendous diets as well, right? They, lots of young players around the world. Mitch Marsh used to have a horrendous diet. Shane Warne, right? So there is an element of diet that plays a part, but realistically, Peter Siddle was still bowling at the same pace when he became a vegetarian. It doesn't. I don't think it actually changes your pace. And the broken down bowlers thing. Well, Australia had Pattinson, Stark, Hazelwood and Cummins, and they played, 2 tests together? Yes. And they were supposed to be the next generation. England have got bowlers from all kinds of backgrounds who are always injured. That's what fast bowlers do. They get injured.
And if you go to the lower rung of, cricket, a lot of fast bowlers are mismanaged even more, right? Someone will do their back and their career is done for. So that's a very common occurrence in Pakistan, actually. They even do that to the senior team members, but down, in lower leagues, you get these prodigies who are just wasted because they aren't managed properly and the alignment is wrong. And what they really need to do in all of these countries is invest in more biomechanic labs. I feel like that could fix it.
It's funny because you just came from Jimmy Anderson today and he was almost ruined by biomechanics. But yeah, look, it needs to be more professionalized across the board.
Absolutely. All right, final super chat of the day. Is it? I think it is.
Yes.
Indie Guy, he asks, you guys should do a quick picks on best looking trophies. All women's tournaments have better trophies in international cricket and PSL has the best in leagues. Not a bad shout, but will we find 15?
Who was the biscuit trophy?
Pakistan.
Fuck, that
yeah, it was the Tuck biscuit. It was one of the worst trophies I've ever seen. We should do bad trophies. That's a better quick picks.
Genius. Well, I tell you what, we might do something, and we'll need a little bit of research, but we can do that, best trophies / awards / everything else. Because when Mackay Ntini played his 100th test, Castle Lager gave him a fridge with his face on it. And I still think it's the best crap thing anyone's ever been given. But you have a look at some of the old stuff in the old days. And there's, of course, the great story about Richard Hadley getting a motorbike or a car or whatever it was, and the team going, okay, well, we're going to sell this off and give it. So, oh, I won the car. So there are some good stories of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't even know what most of the trophies look like. If the Champions Trophy was here, I think if I saw it, I would know. Probably because I probably have like coffee flasks in my house with the logo on. Like my wife. Or...
You're being too harsh over there. It's a nice looking trophy, the Champions Trophy.
No. What I mean is I wouldn't know what it looks like.
Okay. Right. I recognize the main ones. You know, the Women's World Cup, the ODI World Cup, the T20 World Cup, and the Champions Trophy. Beyond that, I don't recognize them.
ODI World Cup is the only one that if you asked me to draw it, I think I could come up with a decent option.
You wouldn't be able to draw the T20 World Cup trophy?
I can't even remember what
Zigzaggy.
I don't remember.
Steel thing.
That's what I'm saying. I don't remember any. Apparently, I just don't care. But Micaiah and Tini's fridge, I could draw in memory.
All right. Well, that wraps up.
Do you think he still has it?
Probably.
I'd be disappointed.
I mean, why would you sell a fridge?
With your face on it?
Was it like his face-shaped fridge? Was it like
No,
that?
it was like stickered. It was cheap as hell.
Yeah, no, if it was his face-shaped, then I would never sell that fridge.
No, they didn't make a fridge of his face. What's wrong with you? They cast the lager. They gave him a shit fridge with a sticker on it.
Someone should do that. If you guys have a lot of money, I want my face on a fridge, and my face is the fridge.
A 3D printed fridge.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and my nose has the water dispenser thing.
Oh, that's not okay.
Anyway, that wraps up this episode of Uncovered. Just a quick reminder, guys, you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage. That can be your one-stop shop for all the work that we do as part of this team, whether it be written content, podcasts, or videos. We'll be back with another live or overthrow/uncovered episode next week because I'm still crashing at Jared's. And yeah, you guys have a good one, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
If you need your pitch changed, well, NordVPN can doctor any surface to a new location so that your IP address is set for you to win. Want to watch a game on a free stream in another hemisphere? Give NordVPN the ball. Or if you just want to watch a clip on social media that a cricket board won't allow, promote NordVPN to pinch hit. So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a bowler protects the boundaries in the death overs with nordvpn.com/Kimber today.